the M235i, a car any driving enthusiast would be proud to own. But that doesn't absolve it of its weak points, 5 in particular, that some would hate. And in today's video, we're gonna cover them all. Let's get into it.
What's up everybody, my name is Fritz and welcome to the channel. I hope all of you are doing well and off to a great start in 2022. And as with every new year, we have a particular set of goals and resolutions that we set for ourselves in order to take that one step further in life and improve ourselves. And when it comes to our cars, it's no different. The good thing is that usually those goals involve some kind of service, replacement, or upgrade. And typically, when we do one of those things, we don't have to worry about it for the rest of the year, depending on how much you drive. Which is why exactly in today's video, we're gonna go over the top 5 reasons to hate the M235i, but also how to remedy them. Because in all honesty, I love this car. And once you fix these 5 particular quirks on the M235i, it's gonna help your driving experience go through the roof and help you fall in love with this car as much as I have. Which brings us to the first thing to hate about the M235i. But this is more of a BMW gripe in general, and that is using excessive plastic components. And I do understand that using plastic components helps the business maintain its profit margins in order to continue to deliver us excellent goods, but please, not in the engine bay. And I can overlook that the airbox with its superior design brings in cold, unpressurized air and is on the top of the engine bay, so it's not subject to too much heat. But it delivers heat directly to the turbo inlet pipe, which is down deeper in the engine bay, makes direct contact with the turbo, an extremely hot piece, causing this pipe to crack and break as mine did. Then from the turbo, it feeds that pressurized air into the boost pipe, which isn't too bad because it's a rubberized piece, but it goes into the intercooler, which has plastic flanges. And those flanges have to support that hot air, but then across the surface of the intercooler, we're cooling down that air, condensing it, and then delivering it up to the thin-walled charge pipe. So the charge pipe is carrying pressurized cold air up through a hot engine bay into the engine. A recipe for disaster. So the solution to this, unfortunately, is that we have to go out and buy our own pieces, which I would suggest full metal or some sort of silicone metal combination in order to last the life of your engine. But the plastic parts don't end there. And when we get into the interior of the car, we're also bombarded with a ton of plastic components, which I can overlook because a lot of it can be replaced for things like the carbon fiber interior trim, as well as 3M vinyl wrap. But the next part that bothers me about the interior of the car doesn't really have to deal with the fact that it's plastic, but its location, and that is the door handle, specifically the interior door handle. And this didn't really bother me too much in the beginning, but as it started to rain this year, and I was really trying to get in my car really fast, I noticed that because I was rushing, I had a tendency to swing the door open, and then I would rush to grab the door handle, get in, and then it would slip out of my hands. And there I was lucky that it closed, but oftentimes I would get something like this where it would just slip and it wouldn't close. So I wish that there was some sort of closer door handle here, or even like one of those straps that you see on those carbon fiber door cards in the racing cars where you could pull it and it's much easier to close the door. Or the other solution to this problem would have been that they use the same door handles as in the 3s and the 4 series. Then you would be able to get a better grip on it because in the 2s and the 1 series, we have this wider interior door handle. And don't get me wrong, it makes that carbon fiber interior piece look really good, but when you need that to function really well, especially in the rain, you wish it wasn't that wide. But in a situation like this, where it's nice out, we can very easily close our door, and then we're met with the third thing that I hate about the M235i, but specifically the 2 series as a whole, and that is we do not have an oil temperature gauge on this car. Which is kind of weird because if engine temperatures get too high, you get a message on the iDrive screen, but you have no idea what that temperature is. And even if you're somebody who doesn't track your car and need the most exact measurement, it would be nice to know when your car is warmed up especially at the start of the day when you turn on the car. Because here you don't want to necessarily drive off with the car as soon as you start it. You want to give it at least a few seconds to a minute in order to allow the oil to circulate through the engine and then go ahead. But you're also going to want to know when the engine is at optimal running temperatures. That way you can really let on the gas and drive the car as it was intended. But if you don't know, you're really taking a guess here and potentially could cause premature wear over time to the engine that, if you did know the temperatures, you wouldn't do. And there are a ton of solutions to this issue, most notably the P3 vent gauges, because it only partially blocks the vent over here on this side. And then there are other ones that give you more functionality but completely block off a vent over here on your right side. My solution was neither. It was kind of a knockoff P3 vent gauge that doesn't really go in the vent, but I used some double-sided tape to mount it close enough to the instrument cluster. That way all of my information is right there for me. And I will admit, the biggest contributing factor as far as why I chose this gauge has to deal with price, because it comes in at a fraction of the price of the P3 vent gauges. And when you turn on the lights at night, it looks pretty good and could blend in. Although the text is a little bit bigger, unless you're super nitpicky and you want something super seamless, I think that this is going to be a good solution to go with, and it's going to save some money in your pocket for future projects.
I even tried activating the BC temp gauge on Bimmer code, and although it pops up, the meter just stays on cold, at least on the pre-LCI model. If anyone knows how to get this working, please share that information in the comments.
Which leads us right into the number 4 thing to hate about the M235i. And this one is going to be a little bit controversial, because from this position, the driver's seat, the size of the M235i is awesome. Because it's such a small car, it can actually handle better than some of the M cars right out of the gate. And then if you do some suspension modifications, nothing can touch this car. But when you get to the engine bay, it is a nightmare. Because at any given point in the engine bay of the 2 Series, it's actually 2 inches thinner than the 3s and the 4s. And if you've watched DIY videos for particular modifications that are down deeper in the engine bay, you've probably heard people say things like, there's a tight tolerance here, it's hard to get in a tool here. And on the 2 Series, that statement is amplified even more. For those of you who have experience working on cars, you know that 2 inches less of working space is the difference between getting the job done, having to buy a specialty tool, or taking it to a shop. But it doesn't stop at the engine bay. Take, for example, the suspension components like the coilovers. Now, you don't have to take off the entire knuckle as some videos have alluded to, but you do have to break apart the strut from the knuckle inside the wheel well. You can't tilt out the strut and then pull it out with better leverage as you can in the 3s and the 4s. The 2 Series has that slimmer design that if you work on your car, it's going to be a nightmare when you start working on it, because it's not as easy as the 3s and the 4s, which already have some difficulties. But in all honesty, these cars are quite fun to work on despite the small additional challenge. The good thing is that if any of your buddies with a 3 or 4 Series ask you to work on their car doing that exact same job, you can be confident that you can do it in much less time with much less sweat. Which brings us to the number 5 thing and the last issue that I have with the 2 Series, and that is the location of the battery. Not necessarily where it's placed, but because with the 2 Series, as we alluded to, there's much less room in this car, so there's also much less cargo room. And the battery being placed here is super inconvenient. And if it was in the same location as the 3 and the 4 Series, in the back behind on the passenger side, we would have more space to store our items in the 2 Series, especially for daily driving this car, versus having to put it in that vertical slot where the battery was on the 3 and 4 Series. There's not much space there, but that's a small price to pay for this amazing car. And there it is, the top 5 things to hate about the M235i. And I wasn't kidding when I said some of these things are really nitpicky, because when you consider what you're getting out of this car, giving you an ultimate driving experience in the ultimate driving machine, it really makes you feel that BMW delivered on that promise when you purchased the M235i. But if you feel that I left something out, please leave it down in the comment section below, as well as any other questions that you might have. If you need any of the resources, it's going to be down in the description links. And don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. And I'll see all of you in the next one.